Is that good?
I like it.
We kind of did it.
Yeah, I would say you, but yeah.
Hi everyone, at WisCon42, one of the guests of honor was the fabulous and brilliant Tananarive. I had an opportunity to hear her read a short story from her short story collection, Ghost Summer. So you'll hear a bit of that, and then we will go into an interview that I had with her.
Look for omens. He only laughed when she talked about grandmother's beliefs, not that Carl was around in the summer to talk to about anything. His training was in summer, so it wouldn't interfere with his job as county school bus supervisor. Last year, he'd been gone only a couple of weeks, but this time he was spending 2 long months at Fort Irwin in California. He was in training exercises, so the only way to reach him was in a real emergency through the Red Cross.
I was super lucky to be able to spend a few minutes with Tananarive in an interview. Here's what we talked about. So thank you very much for giving me some of your time.
My pleasure.
So everybody from Onyx Pages, obviously this is the fantastic Tananarive.
Hello.
And I need to tell you that there's a booktuber called Musical Tati. Her name is Tatiana, and she's been reading through all of your work, and she wishes she could be here. So
okay, I'm going to resist the urge to turn around and look at you.
Okay.
So I'm going to look at your face here.
That's fine.
But thank you. Hi, Tatiana.
And okay. And then my wife told me will kill me because she also said she wants you to know that she says hi. Okay.
Okay, what is your wife's name? And I can
Tomi.
Tomi. Hi, Tomi.
Okay. So my first question to you is, of everything that you've written,
yes,
what are you most proud of?
Well, most of my writing is fiction, so I think a lot of people would expect me to pick one of my more popular novels, but the answer to this question is always Freedom in the Family, a mother-daughter memoir of the fight for civil rights. It's the only nonfiction book I've written. I wrote it with my late mother, Patricia Stevens Dew. It's one of the most difficult projects I've ever worked on because nonfiction for me, I'm right-handed, and nonfiction for me is like working with my left hand. It's not my preferred way of storytelling. That adherence to facts is a bit troublesome. But also the most difficulty...
It's okay. There's always a motorcycle, always.
The most difficulty was that the subject matter was hard. It was about trauma. It was about people being arrested and attacked and discriminated against and jailed. Interview subjects who were often crying as they recalled their experiences in the civil rights movement. My mother often crying as she recalled her experiences in the civil rights movement. So yeah, the weight of carrying those stories and living in that space was very difficult, but again, also very special. I took a leave of absence from my job as a reporter and for a year to work on that book, and my mom and I spent a lot of special time together. We traveled up and down Florida interviewing people together. We interviewed Kwame Ture, Stokely Carmichael. We interviewed people she had known during the movement. The survivors of people who died during the movement. So that, especially now that she's gone, she passed away in 2012, it's especially important for me that we wrote that book together.
My mom just wrote a book about her spiritual experiences in her 60s, and it was a really amazing thing for her to do and to see her through.
Great. You helped her out?
I did not help her out.
Oh, okay.
No, I did not help her out. But I was there through the years that she did it, and I'm really proud of her.
I can say that writing a book with one's mother is not always easy, as much as I loved her. But I've collaborated with both my mother and my husband, so if you can do that, you can do anything.
So the second question that I wanted to ask you about, we had sort of a pre-chat about this,
yeah,
and I'll leave it a little bit more open. So one of the things that I've been trying to do on this channel is to pay attention to queer themes, yes, in Afrofuturism.
Yes.
And part of that is because, in my view, Afrofuturism, if you look at the artists that are credited with its inception, they're either queer or have, challenged heteronormativity in some way.
True.
Whether it's George Clinton, certainly Samuel Delaney. I mean, if we look now, we've got Janelle Monáe, as you had mentioned.
Yes.
And a lot of other writing, like even in Octavia Butler's work.
Jewel Gomez.
Oh my gosh, I just read the Gilda stories. That was fantastic.
Yes.
And so, but I'm also finding that some of the mainstream sort of
even Outcast, like some of their videos, right? Like how they presented gender was a little bit different. So what are your thoughts now in terms of like how Afrofuturism might be a place where we can sort of challenge some of that heteronormativity, and what can we be imagining in that?
Right. I love that. I love your reframing of the question too. But yes, the whole idea of futurism is that we're envisioning a world that is different from the world as we've perceived it up to this point. And by we, I mean mainstream readers, music lovers. That whole question of challenging heteronormativity is super important. He wasn't an Afrofuturist, and he wasn't queer, I guess, but Prince, and his sort of gender bending as an artist, I think was super important, and was very important to a lot of queer young people who first began to even interrogate the question of sexuality based on seeing him, right? Like, so masculinity looks different, it can look different. And
Michael Jackson too,
absolutely. So the groundwork is there. I mean, obviously Samuel R. Delany, the godfather of Afrofuturism, it's not unfair to say, out there publishing as a young queer man in the 60s, and hinting around, we were talking about Bible 17, I and Gomorrah, obviously, if you've read that short story, which is in the Dark Matter anthology, and also I found it online. I and Gomorrah is online now, which opens basically with a discussion of heterosexual behavior and the fact that the police leave you alone and this kind of thing. I said homosexual. Did I say homosexual?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and the police leaving him alone. Which you think about it in the 60s, as I tell my Afrofuturism students at UCLA, that was the era where even on mainstream television, like the Dick Van Dyke Show, if you had a married couple, they had to sleep in separate twin beds. So there was this very Puritan attitude about sexuality. So to even be hinting about homosexuality in the 60s was huge. And in reading history in the Jim Crow era, there are some people who might argue that homosexuals were treated, I don't know about worse, but sometimes almost as badly. They weren't as easily identifiable as black people, obviously. But if people knew you were queer, that was very, very dangerous. So yeah, we do have that foundation and that history in it. And it's such a perfect kind of place to explore difference of perception, difference of attitudes. Now it's really hard even for me as a cis, hetero woman to keep up even, right? Because our ideas of gender are changing so quickly in the here and now that when you're trying to extrapolate out to near future, right? 100 years from now, what can we expect? I just tried to write a story set about 250 years in the future.
Cool.
And they don't even, I tried to ungender it. It's difficult to write completely ungendered. The language that when gender came up was like sort of XXXY kind of language as opposed to man-woman, right? Because I'm playing with what would it be? How would it be? And there are times that will fall short, obviously, and one of the things I mentioned in my guest of honor speech last night, since we were being all honest, and the other guest of honor talked about how he thought he had fallen short as a feminist in some of his work, and I'm like, yeah, I've tried to be inclusive of gay characters. I started writing gay characters almost as an adult. Some of the first characters I was writing were gay. They were my practice because for some reason I was moving away from black characters for whatever reason. Canon, honestly, it wasn't even conscious. But I was electrified by marginalized communities that were not black as well. Like I went through a phase where I was sort of electrified by learning about Jews, and I went through a phase where I wrote about a gay teenager trying to come to terms with his sexuality, and I started writing a novel in grad school about a gay playwright trying to fix his relationship. But these were all white characters, right? And when I started publishing my work, and this was coming because I had so many gay friends, and I wanted to sort of advocate for them. So when I started publishing, like in my second novel, My Soul to Keep, I have a gay character, Peter Donovich, who I only realized later was probably based on a real person, because this guy I knew who worked at the paper who was gay said that was me, right? And I was like, oh, well, maybe it was. But you don't know when you're writing, I was just like, oh, it's just like me. I have a lot of gay friends. Of course, she's going to have a gay friend. But at the same time, I mean, not to have spoilers, I'm very critical looking back on it now, because I did the same thing that I would criticize of a white writer if he had done it to a black character.
Yeah.
Because he dies in the book, right? He dies, and he dies pretty early in the book, and the death is kind of a catalyst in the book, right? So even though, I mean, as we've discussed, and I get this too, we're happy just to be in the story sometimes. And I know as a younger reader, and this book was published in 1997, and during that era, yeah, I was just happy to be in the movie. I was happy to be in the story. But now I would probably do it differently. I wouldn't have one gay character. There'd be more than one gay character. Maybe Jessica's sister would be gay, right? If I were writing it now. So I hold myself to a pretty high standard there, and I'm working on a short story that has is set in the future where gender and sexuality are so much more fluid. I almost hate to call her queer, because will that even be a word? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think those of us who are hetero writers, in addition to trying to be inclusive, just as I would be critical of a white... All right, here's the thing.
And then my video cut off, and I thought that I was recording with my telephone, but I wasn't, so I've lost the rest of the footage, unfortunately. We had a really good conversation about some of the ways that we might critique white writers who try to include characters of color in their books and then get criticized for not doing it well, and how that can sometimes apply similarly to heterosexual or cisgender authors who are trying to write queer characters into their stories and who similarly may not do it well or may not do it well at first. Anyway, I don't want to paraphrase because Tananarive is much more eloquent than I am about the life of writing. We ended the interview with me expressing thanks to Tananarive, which I'll do now. Tananarive, you're amazing. You're an inspiration. It is wonderful to see a black woman, beautiful black woman with natural hair like yourself, writing horror and talking about Afrofuturism and using social media to connect and teaching students and lifting up writers outside of your own identity, like black queer writers, to get published and to get access to the business of writing. So thank you very much for sharing your time with me, sharing your work with the world, and for continuing to dream. You're fantastic.